Hi, welcome to part 3 of creating crystal glasses in Blender, and today we are combining what we learned from part 1 and part 2 into a third design. Let's start with a plane this time. What we do again, go into edit mode, press R, X, 90 to have it in front of us when we press 1 on numpad, and before I start with the design I press G set 1 in edit mode, so I'm having the ground of the glass at the origin of my model. To model the glass, what I'm gonna add first is a loop cut in the middle. I'm beveling this loop cut just a bit, selecting one of the resulting edges and just move it a bit forward. This is the base shape we need, pretty easy so far. And what I'm gonna do next, I'm adding an array modifier, arraying it 8 times. And after arraying it, we are deforming it to bend it again. So like with the first glass, I'm selecting the bend option, selecting the Z-axis to bend it properly and set it to 360 degrees. We don't want these hard edges, so what we are doing is we select the edges we want to be sharp, set them as mark sharp, and the ones on the outside should stay smooth. We set it to auto smooth, and the ones we want to smooth stay smooth, and these ones in the middle stay sharp. We need to connect the first and the last one, and we do the same as we did with the first glass. We are using a weld modifier, and we have a smooth base shape. I think this glass is a bit too big, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna select the outer edges, pressing S and X, and bringing everything a bit closer together without changing the middle. I'm adding another deform modifier, but this time instead of twisting or bending it along that, I want to taper it, because I want the glass to be smaller at the bottom than at the top. But if we are bending it at this stage, it creates a very weird and asymmetric result, and we want it very symmetrical, but we can fix that. The reason why this tapering doesn't work well is our origin isn't in the center of the glass. What I could do, I could set an empty here in the center and set this as origin for tapering, but let me show you another solution. I'm deactivating the tapering for now from the viewport, so we don't see it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm adding a displace modifier. We can use the displacement for a neat little trick. We can select an axis of the direction, and as you can see with the displacement modifier, I can move the glass along that direction. For our case, we want to select Y, pressing the N panel under dimensions and Y. We can copy this value into strength, remove the M for meters, and we need to put a minus in front of it. Now our glass is centered by using the displacement modifier. I'm making the taper back visible again, and now it's tapering properly. This is too much, I just want to taper it a bit. So now we have a tapered glass, but our base shape is still just this plane. This is okay, but not very interesting. These crystal glasses always have some nice details or twists to it, and twist is just the right word, because what I want to do next, I want to twist the glass around itself. So I'm adding another deform modifier, and this time we're using twist options. We're twisting it along the Z axis. The more we twist, the more distorted it gets. To have the twist a bit more organically, I recommend adding some loop cuts along the Z axis. Let's add 19 loop cuts, and you can already see twist is much nicer, but I think it's very uniform. The shape is getting more interesting, but it's still too uniform in my opinion. I want this twist to be a bit more asymmetrical, and what we can do to make it a bit more asymmetrical, we create a vertex group again. We are assigning this vertex group to the deform modifier. So pressing assign here now should deform it. It's still the same, But let me show you something else. What we are doing next, we are going into weight paint mode. I want barely any deformation at the bottom and I want much deformation at the top. I'm deactivating every modifier so we only see our plane, and I activate the words so we can see what we are doing here. I want to have every word to have a weight of 0. So again I go into vertex group, set the weight to 0, press assign, and it gets blue. The vertex weight goes from blue to green to yellow to red. The more redder it is, the more it's affected by modifiers or other things we assigned this vertex group to. For now, everything is at 0 and I want an even gradient from the bottom to the top. So I select the gradient option, and when we just click the word up here, moving it down, holding Control helps us, having it as even as possible. But you can see there is gradient, but it's not very linear. So to have it linear, Control Z, set it everything back to 0. We go to the fall off option, and in the fall off we select linear, clicking this word again, holding Control, moving it downwards, and this looks much more linear to me. Important thing is the bottom should stay blue because I want barely any deformation at the bottom, and this is the weight painting I'm gonna use here. Back to object mode, making my modifiers all visible again, and I think this shape is much more interesting than before. Pretty much satisfied with the result. Before I'm gonna apply, pressing Shift D to make a duplicate, move it to the side, press M in your collection, call this backup collection, and deactivate my backup collection just in case anything goes wrong. We have this backup. There's one more thing I want to do. I might want to increase the resolution of the glass later. So where I have my hard edges, I also set a mean crease of 1, and we can test how this looks when we're pressing Ctrl 1 or Ctrl 2. It smoothens out the bigger areas, but it does not affect our sharp areas. But for now, let's keep it like this. We are applying every modifier from the top to the bottom: array, deform, weld, displace, next deform, and the twist. Next step is to close the bottom and to close the top. Then we are beveling the bottom again to have it smooth here. I think this is fine for now. And for the top, I want to extrude the glass because I think this is about only half or about 1/3 of the glass. Let's select the top, press E, move it upwards, pressing 1. And what I'm gonna do, I'm scaling it, and this is more like visually how you want this to look. You could make it like this or make it like this, but I think it would be great to have a visual line here. And for our glass, I think it's nicer to have it round at the top instead of this jagged pattern here. So I'm pressing Alt Shift S, making it round again. And what I also want is a smooth transition between our hard edges and the round top. So I'm adding a loop cut here, pressing X, removing all the words. I'm selecting the top face, selecting the jagged ones here, pressing F3, bridge edge loops, and in the bridge edge loops menu I'm adding more numbers of cuts. And I also want to move the twist a bit, and you have many more options to make it look much more organic, much nicer. Like when you change the smoothness, you have some control of the linearity of the shape, if you wanted more roundness or not. I think I'm gonna keep it close to 1. I want a rather linear progression here. And also with the profile you can move it outwards or inwards, but I leave this at 0 for now. I'm adding a subdivision surface modifier here by pressing Ctrl 1 in object mode, and what I notice is we have sharp edges and we have a sharp cut here, but we can fix that later with the bevel shader. It won't be as much noticeable in the render. What you could do is to add more roundness to the top edges by selecting one of these rings, pressing Alt Shift S, and smoothen it out. Maybe this one too, Alt Shift S. To have a better transition between the sharp edges. and the organic part. I'm pressing I to inset the top, E to extrude, moving it down, moving it further down. I think about here is right, pressing Alt Z so I can see how it behaves, scaling it down, and this should work. Setting a loop cut here, moving it down, and we can see I'm inserting it here to control the subdivision. We can also press Ctrl 2 to have it a little bit more smoother. But be careful if using too many subdivisions. You might need to use further support loops to control the shape. So we can fix this at the bottom here by selecting the inserted face here, pressing Ctrl plus, scale it again until it doesn't cross anymore. If you use auto smooth instead of smooth, go into data properties, because you might get sharp edges where you don't want any sharp edges. And increasing this angle value here to maybe 60 or even higher will set more smooth edges where they should be smooth, and the ones we marked sharp will stay sharp. This helps to keep the shading as smooth as possible, but we want this to be a smooth glass. So next I'm pressing Ctrl R to add the loop cut to create this round part at the top of the glass again. Shift D, moving it a bit upwards with Z, pressing P, because I want to separate this from the mesh. Now I have my glass object and the ring object, and with the ring object I want to remove the subdivision, and with the glass the same. Let's set the subdivision to 0. It might cause issues otherwise when we set the thickness of the ring. So convert this to a curve as we did with the first glass, and in the curve menu under geometry and under depth we increase the depth. We set it to shade smooth, pressing 1, moving it a bit down, getting close to that edge, and increasing the value until we have a value we like. I'm moving it a bit upwards, and I think a value of 0.16 could work. We'll see. We convert the curve back to a mesh. Select the curve, select the glass, press Ctrl J, activate shade smooth again, and let's see how well these connect. Pressing L to select the ring, moving it upwards again, because I wanna open the glass here. Selecting the ring, removing the verts, and what I don't need here is the bottom ring. Ctrl plus, X, and remove the faces. L to select the full ring, pressing 1 on the numpad and moving it down. Also thinking removing this one, removing the verts, and let's see what happens when we connect these with bridge edge loops again. And be aware, because we used bridge edge loops before with twisting and other options, that these options are at default for this case. And we need to do the same with the inside. Bridging edge loops again. This is pretty much it. This is our glass. Let's see how it looks with some shading. Setting this to cycles, under shading, adding a new material, moving the principle, adding a glass BSDF, and to add something to this empty world, adding a plane. It's way too big. This glass has a height of 4 meters, so S0.1 to a more realistic size. And this is pretty nice. To properly see these hard edges, I recommend adding an HDRI. I use the same one as before, and HDRI gives us much more the glass can reflect, and I don't like the sharp edges, so we are using our bevel normal again to smoothen these edges. The value is way too big. Setting it down to 0.01 is okay, but not great. Let's see what happens if we set it to 0.005. Yep, this is already better. Let's test an even lower value, 0.002. I think this is good. So now we finished all 3 glasses. I hope you're proud of yourself after you finished them along with me. And I really like the look of this, because you can see when you hold the glass against the window it distorts it, and this makes the look of the glass very natural, because we have we have it kinda round, but we also have it kinda uneven, and this makes this natural distortions look very good. And these are the little details which are very important for these kinds of glasses, in my opinion. Basic shapes and some added details that increase the realism and distort the looks around the glass. So I really hope you had much fun following my steps here modeling it, and I also hope you find ways to apply these steps to your own projects and models. And there's at least one more part coming where I talk about lighting and shading, and also about liquids and some tips I use frequently. And I also might have an idea for a fifth part, but I won't promise too much. So if you like the video, subscribe, leave a like, and tell me in the comments what you like about these kinds of tutorials, what you don't like. So I'm always happy to read your messages. See you in the next video. Bye!